Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I'm Charity.
And I'm Ben.
And in 2018, we bought our first RV and set off to travel with our family and explore the United States. Today's video is all about how to rent an RV, plus some tips if you are an RV owner and you might be considering renting out yours. We've actually done it. And so we're gonna share with you later on in the video our experience, let you know how it went, and if we'd ever do it again. With some of the restrictions this year on travel internationally, so many people have taken to domestic travel in the United States. And we kind of think there's no better way to travel domestically than buy an RV.
What we love about the RV is that you have a huge windshield, at least in our Class A here. So you can see the beautiful United States of America from the best view available.
And another thing that we love about just exploring the United States in an RV is having our own bathroom and our own kitchen and our own bed. And many others are feeling the same. And it has never been a more popular time to rent an RV. In fact, this summer, we heard so many stories about you couldn't rent an RV to try because they were all booked and they were basically flying off the shelves, any of the places that had RVs for rent or RV sharing, which we'll get into here in just a minute. But suffice it to say, there's never been a more popular time for RVing than right now.
So how does one go about renting an RV anyways?
That's a great question. So there's lots of options right now to be able to rent an RV. You've got your Cruise America and RV for Rent, and those companies have been around for a while, and that's kind of what a lot of people think of when they think of a rental RV. You know, you're driving down the road and you see one of those RVs that says RV for Rent or Cruise America on the side.
It's pretty obvious usually.
So while those are definitely options, there's also RV sharing options available these days.
Yeah, and what RV sharing is somebody isn't using their RV for a certain period of time. They will rent out the RV and make it available to others to come and rent their RV.
So websites like rvshare.com, outdoorsy.com, and rveasy.com are all sites to be able to rent an RV from a private owner. And we'll put a link for those sites down below. Now, this is a great way to explore RV life because if you notice driving down the road, seeing a Cruise America or RV for Rent, the majority of those that you see are Class C RVs. And there's a good reason for that. And that's because people that are just getting their feet wet kind of like driving something that feels a little bit more like a van or a truck.
Yep.
It's not very intimidating. Like driving this rig behind us can feel intimidating.
Yeah.
So
when it comes to RVs, one size does not fit all.
And for people that are just starting out, jumping behind the wheel of a big rig might not really feel that feasible. So most of the RV rental companies that actually own a fleet of rental RVs tend to go with the Class C RVs. They're very easy to drive and people don't feel as intimidated to drive them. But if you want a different experience, then going through an RV share service where you can rent a travel trailer or
Class B,
fifth wheel, camper van. We've talked about it would be so much fun if we could get a weekend without the kids to rent like a small Airstream and experience that. And so to be able to do something out of the ordinary, or maybe you're considering buying an RV, renting one first is a great option to be able to get your feet wet and get a feel for how does it drive, how does it tow, depending upon what sort of RV that you're looking at. So a few things to be aware of if you do choose to rent an RV, and this is going to go pretty much for any RV rental company out there, whether you do choose a company that owns a fleet of rental RVs or you go through a private owner for RV sharing, you're going to have a security deposit. So they're going to require a deposit. If anything comes back damaged, there's a hole in the wall, there's a hole put in one of the upholstery cushions, they want a damage deposit to be able to cover any damage that might occur while that the RV is out. Another thing to be aware of is that most of the time there will be a mileage charge for mileage over a certain pre-allowed mileage limit. So, and that can vary. If you go through an RV share type of company, the owner is going to set that as far as the mileage that's allowed, how many hours that you might be allowed on a generator if it's equipped with a generator.
So a few things to think about when renting an RV are how large of an RV will you need? How many people are with you traveling?
Right. How many people that you have going with you kind of dictates how large of an RV you might think you need because of sleeping space. So if you're renting a Class C that has an overhead bunk or a Class A with a drop-down bunk, does the dinette fold into a sleeping space? How many people are going to be going with you on your trip really is going to kind of dictate how big of an RV that you might want to consider renting. Another thing to think about is what kind of camping are you wanting to do? If you're going to be staying in an RV park, then most any RV is going to work because you'll have access to full hookups. If you're wanting to do more kind of off-grid or boondocking, then you might want to think about something like a camper van or a towable trailer with higher ground clearance where you can get it into kind of more of those backwoods type of areas.
So renting an RV is another great option if you have friends and family that may want to join you, but you don't have enough room for them in your current RV.
We have a pretty big extended family, so there's been times where we've all met together at a campground and we just didn't have the sleeping space. Now, at that particular campground, there was a cabin option, but a rental RV is a great option for those times where you want to maybe have extended family join you in a camping trip and you just don't have the space. So let's talk about being an RV owner and choosing to rent your RV out on one of these sites. Now, we have personal experience with outdoorsy.com, and we'll put a link to them below. And just in full disclosure, Outdoorsy is not paying us for any of this. We just happen to have personal experience using their platform. And so that's what we're going to share with you is our personal experience with using that. So the RV that we rented out wasn't this one. Just saying.
We wouldn't ever want to rent it out, actually.
We've decided that we would not rent this one out. And that is because with it being a 40-foot diesel pusher, it's pretty large. And even the feedback that we got from the renters that we had and the one we did rent, which was a 32-foot, was that it was kind of longer than what they almost felt comfortable using. And so with this being as long as it is, being a diesel pusher, there's just kind of more things that somebody that's inexperienced wouldn't have a positive experience with. And then, of course, that would make not a positive experience for us either. So we've decided we're not going to rent out this current RV. We have considered purchasing a smaller Class C and keeping it just strictly as a rental RV. And that is something we may still do in the future, something that we continue to talk about, especially as RVing picks up as much as it has been. So we rented out our very first RV. It was a 32-foot Class A gas engine. It was a Fleetwood Pace Arrow. One of the things that we did, and if you go back in this channel to like our very first video, somewhere in there, what we did is we actually did a video walkthrough of that rig. It was geared towards our renters, that we wanted them to have something that was a reference that they could go back to of, you know, like Ben said, how to hook up, but then also, you know, how to put down the leveling jacks and all of those things that we felt like would be something that they would need to know, but they might not remember just in like a walkthrough. So that was one of the very first videos we ever put together.
Yeah.
We've come a long way since then, but that's what we did to just give them that walkthrough experience before they rented from us, but then also to have during the rental period to be able to go back and visit.
So you might be wondering, did we make any money and was it worth it?
And that's a yes and no answer. The very first renter that we ever put out ended up needing a repair. And they were not exactly close by.
way out in the boonies.
They weren't close to any town either, so we had to pay some big bucks to send a mobile tech out to where that they were to get that repair done, and it was with the slide, so it wasn't something that could wait until that they returned it. It was something you couldn't drive down the road with the slide out.
Repairs are on us. It's something that the insurance doesn't cover, of course. So
right, it's your RV, same as if you have a rental house and the air conditioner or something goes out, then you as the landlord are stuck fixing that. So that first renter was a break-even proposition. Now the next two rentals that we had worked out great. So they were very responsible people. And that's one thing I should probably mention about Outdoorsy, is that you have the option as the RV owner to say yes or to say no when you have a rental inquiry.
Right.
So I personally like to do Facebook stalking. So there was a couple of times that people inquired and I kind of looked up their Facebook profile and
they're like, we're going to Burning Man.
Just didn't really quite think that that would be a wise decision on our end to let our investment of our RV go down the road with somebody that I just wasn't convinced was going to take care of it the best. So anyway, the next two that we had were very, very great renters. They took great care of it, and we did make some money on that. So that basically helped just kind of offset our storage costs for the year.
Yeah, and we weren't using the RV for a couple months, so it worked out great.
It did work out great. Now, I will tell you, my heart was in my throat the very first time that very first renter ever drove off with my RV.
Yeah. I remember your text. Everything okay?
It's my second home, and it's like watching it go down the road kind of felt a little bit like sending a kid off to college. But once that we kind of got used to that situation, we realized this was going to make us a little bit of money. It worked out great. And we probably would have continued doing that had we decided that we weren't going to upgrade, but we did upgrade. So we put that RV on the market and then sold it, and then purchased what we have now. So overall, it was a good experience. Mm-hmm. If we were going to ever purchase that Class C that we talked about, maybe renting out, we would probably use Outdoorsy again.
Rent out like a dedicated RV. Like this one now feels like our baby. Like we love it. It's perfect for us. So now we don't want to let other people use it.
It's our second home. Plus, we do plan on doing some RV reno this winter. And so you can't really rent out an RV in the middle of a renovation. And so make sure you are subscribed and stay tuned. It's
going to be awesome.
Because we've got some fun RV reno stuff that's going to be coming up later this season. So make sure that you're subscribed for that. So leave us a comment below. Let us know if you've ever rented, if you're considering renting, or what your experience has been with RV rentals in general. We would love to hear your feedback, or if you have any questions that we can answer for you, or maybe even questions you'd like to see us do a video on in the future, leave them in the comments below. We read each and every one, and we really, really value your feedback. So until next time, we'll see you out there.
On the road.
So until next time,
we'll see you on the road.
Hold on, I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you.
Okay. And
wow.
That makes me scared that a branch is gonna fall. I know.